Anybody else shows up? Hey, so I'll get us started off by thanking everybody for being here today. Thanks, Lavina, for organizing this, and thank you to our speakers, Rob Power from CNIE, Melanie Hamilton from SoTL, Saul Carliner, also from CNIE, and for our summary giver, Pat Maher from Nipissing University, CJSOTL as well. And when it's your turn to speak, I'll invite you to introduce yourselves more fully at that time. So we're pleased that we're following up on our December event with a second collaboration between CNIE and CJSOTL. I'll just say a little bit about CNIE and then invite Patrick to introduce CJSOTL. So CNIE, or Canadian Network for Innovation in Education, is a national organization of professionals committed to excellence in the provision of innovation in education in Canada. Our inclusive culture welcomes all those interested in examining innovation in education, from our K-12 systems, post-secondary organizations, private training and professional development, and those involved in industry. Our goal is to provide a space for dialogue, collaboration, and innovation. Pat.
Yeah, thanks, David. So I'm here sort of wearing three hats, and I guess Mel and Brett and I wear three hats interchangeably. We're all involved with SoTL Canada, the Scholarship of Teaching and Learn Canada, which is part of the Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Ed. CJ SoTL is the Canadian Journal for SoTL, which Brett is the senior editor for, and both Mel and myself also wear the hat of being on the board of directors of the International Society for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. So a mixed bag there, but we're pleased to have the conversation in December, but also the conversation now.
Thank you. So I'll turn it over to Rob to introduce himself and give us the first part of our presentation today. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, David. My name is Rob Power, and I'm with the board of directors for CNIE. I'm also an assistant professor at Cape Breton University, specialized in instructional design, particularly for online learning, digital accessibility, and educational technology integration. And I've been in the education sector now, well, give you an idea how long. My very first week of teaching, 9/11 happened. And that's how I switched over to being an ed tech enthusiast and reaching out to my students that way. So I've been around for a while. And what I was thinking about talking about for just a couple of minutes is a SoTL initiative that I've been a part of for a few years now. Prior to joining with CNIE, I was involved with an organization called the International Association for Mobile Learning. I joined their board of directors, their executive committee back in 2013 after I ran their international conference over in Doha, Qatar, and served as their president from 2017 to 2019. And when I went to our annual conference at Concordia in Chicago back in November 2018, myself and 2 or 3 colleagues sat around a table and decided that, sort of quasi-separate from the organization, we'd like to start up some unofficial SoTL activities of our own and try and expand the reach of what the organization was able to accomplish, rather than just organizing conferences and things like that. We wanted to actually collaborate on some research. So we started out with a small group. I think there were about 6 of us by the end of things the first year. And our focus was on seamless learning in higher education. And we started looking at something called the Seamless Learning Education Design Framework. And basically what we look at with that framework is we examine higher education courses for some of the human factors, their student-centeredness, some of the instructor-related factors, some of the infrastructure factors that influence a seamless learning experience for students. And we were sort of comparing how they all played out in different international contexts. So obviously, I was the Canadian representative on there, one of two Canadian representatives. Marguerite Coles has also been involved with us for a few years with this. And we now have probably 24 members around the world. We're not an official organization. We're not, we don't have any official papers or anything like that. We're more like just a research collaborative or a research lab. And each of us are looking at courses that we're involved with or other courses at our own institution that we have contacts with. And we're collecting some data on them every year as we try to implement more of the seamless learning education design framework. And just seeing how things have changed over the past few years. And there have been some changes, obviously, as a result of COVID. And what we have been able to accomplish by this is, we have 24 international researchers now, which obviously looks very good for anybody's research portfolio if they're in academia. But we've also been able to get a few peer-reviewed articles published, several conference presentations related to it. We hold a monthly webinar series similar to what CNIE does. Just did one last week looking at the connections between artificial intelligence and seamless learning design. And we've also put out 2 open access ebooks, one in 2020 and one in 2022. And we're currently collecting the data and looking at putting out our 3rd open access ebook in the near future. So yeah, I just wanted to share that information because it's been a really rewarding experience, and it to me it really illustrates the power of getting involved, and even with informal SoTL groups, looking at scholarship of teaching and learning, and getting some useful information that not only instructors but policymakers can use to help them make decisions about making better teaching and learning experiences for everybody. And while I've got the page open here, I'm just going to pop the link to our website in the chat. Does need a little bit of updating, but our 2 ebooks are on there, as well as some of our conference presentations and some of our members. And anybody is welcome to reach out and collaborate with us. So be interested in seeing your names come across our inbox.
Thanks, Rob. And at this point, we'll turn it over to Melanie.
Hello, everybody, and greetings from Saskatchewan and Treaty 6 territory and home of the Métis. It's a beautiful day here in Saskatchewan, and it's finally, all the snow is gone for now. So I'm really looking forward to the spring and the sunshine. So as Pat kind of mentioned, that I've been doing SoTL at the national and the international level for a number of years now, but my home is at the University of Saskatchewan as the director of the Scholarship for Teaching and Learning Center, and we offer graduate level programming here. So we have a master's, a PhD, and a certificate in SoTL, which is just so wonderful that more institutions are starting to think of SoTL as an important part of a professor's research trajectory. And we're hoping with some of our credential programming that we're helping people get there almost a decade earlier than they would have originally, when most of us could say we fell into SoTL by accident. And it's a common conversation that we have when we introduce ourselves at most SoTL events. And when I said that, both Brett and Pat smiled, because we know that that's the case. And so now with some of our graduate students, they're like, I want to become a professor. And this is, I'm intentionally learning about SoTL earlier because teaching matters to me. And so that being said, that for people that are on the call and for people that might not know, is there's a lot of SoTL communities around that want to help people advance their SoTL research. And then one of them is SoTL Canada, which has been working with the Society for Teaching, Learning, and Higher Education for about 12 years now. and we'll support things at that national level. And if you're not aware that SoTL Canada puts on monthly or twice a semester webinars to help people understand SoTL research processes. So for those who are trained in a different discipline and who are not comfortable in different methodologies or research lenses, it's a really good way to learn that you can research not only in your own traditional discipline way of thinking about research, but there's other methodologies you might want to try. And if you've never been to a SoTL conference at the national level, STELI is a great place to start. There's lots of, when you go to a STELI conference, there's lots of threads that are SoTL specific, where people talk about research ideas that may be in progress or that have been completed, but they also like to share ideas about research that they're thinking about and start to gain some collaborative partners. And we know that SoTL traditionally works in an interdisciplinary space. So being able to look and work with people across Canada is a really good way to expand our own thinking about how we teach. And it doesn't necessarily have to be discipline specific or even institutional specific, as much as that we have these ideas that engage students and that we want to share those ideas with others, so that they can adopt that type of teaching strategy in their own classroom. So there's SoTL Canada, which is a good support, and then an even broader support is the ISOTL, which is the International Society for the Teaching and Learning. And so Pat sits as the vice president for Canada, and I'm the president-elect coming in. And at that level, we talk about how do we support our students, not only in the local context, which would be kind of the national, but how do we adopt practices from that international context, and that brings some of those same ideas into different, cultures and norms about, well, if they're doing it in Australia, why couldn't we be doing it here? And then even more so advocating for those underrepresented countries who may want to start some really good teaching, but they don't have the infrastructure or the institutional support to do that. And so ISOTL will also support that by collaborating with their different partnerships with, like, let's say Canada and Indonesia or Ghana, and to say, like, this is how we do it. How can we support you to engage in that SoTL research? So that's one thing. ISOTL has a conference every year. This coming year, it's going to be in French Lick, Indiana, October 28th to 31st. But some unique things that ISOTL also offers is something called International Collaborative Writing Groups. And within those international collaborative writing groups, they have them every year and they're attached to the conference. And you start to kind of meet about 10 months before the conference, but it helps you start to be able to write in that teaching learning space and to engage with different partners across the globe, whether it's Global South or Global North, and see on different specific teaching topics. So there's some really unique opportunities. And this past year, I was able to lead one of the international collaborative writing groups. And it is such an amazing experience. We're looking at SoTL leadership and how people get into leadership from a SoTL lens versus their disciplinary lens. And how do we engage in that? Is it at a faculty level, an educational developer level, at a technologist level, or that you already have a positionality that is attended to leadership? So there's a variety of ways that you can kind of get into SoTL that are supported nationally and internationally. And it's important to reach out to people that you know, because the SoTL community is generous at the best of times, where they'll help you not only develop a research project, but will share some of their previous data collection tools if it aligns with your research, and that will be willing to help you at any step of the way. So I see that Pat is kind of adding some of the links to what we do at the ISOTL or SoTL Canada levels, and we're happy to help support you when you have any questions, or if you think that you have an idea but you're just not sure where to go, that there's a lot of people that will be willing to help you out. So those are some of the things you can do at the national and international level. So I will turn it back unless anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Melanie. And move it on to Saul. And if you aren't watching the chat, just open that up. There are great resources flying fast and furiously at us. Make sure to click them all.
Well, my involvement, first of all, I'm Saul Carliner. I'm a professor and chair of the Department of Education at Concordia University in Montreal. I got into issues of teaching and learning in higher education. I'm kind of, by teaching and learning in higher education, my actual expertise is in training and development for the workplace. So and there are some elements of the work that we do for developing faculty that actually is a type of workplace learning, but there are unique aspects of teaching and learning in higher ed that are unique to this environment. My major contribution has been within my institution, and that's been the development of a graduate certificate in teaching and learning in higher and continuing ed. It was a rework of a prior program that was solely open to PhD candidates. So not needless to say, it's not a gigantic population that's open to attending this. And even more limiting, they had to have what's called a reserve course to teach. And that would be a course that would be open for PhD students. And there's a very, very limited number of those available in my institution, because the proportion of those courses is dictated by a particular contract that we have with our part-time union. And they wanted to expand the reach and scope, and that's when I became involved with this program. And so the new program is intended for people that teach at both the college and the university level, and also teach not only in the academic side, but also in our continuing ed side, because there are a number of people who will teach in continuing ed. They're very, very proud of that work, and they want to do the best possible job there. So that's what, that was the audience. The program itself has 3 courses and a 2-course internship. And the first course is a course on the foundations of teaching and learning in higher ed and continuing ed. And what makes this unique, in addition to talking a little bit about student learning, the support that students need in higher ed, and some developmental needs, and just the whole basic concept of student-centered teaching, and there's a whole unit on that. We also introduce students to the concept of scholarship of teaching and learning. And the last project in the class is where they actually have to go to that body of literature to look at a course that they would want to teach, if there's no specific research on their courses, and many of them are looking for something super, super specific, then we have them look a little bit more broadly at the discipline. And they're supposed to learn, they also learn how to do a lit review in this, and they do a structured abstract, they do some coding in an Excel sheet, and they come up with some general conclusions about the part of the body of literature they looked at. They're only required to read 7 articles, so they're not getting really in depth with this. The next course in the series is about designing courses. The third one is facilitating. Then they go to an internship where they would actually teach a course. The challenge with this one is that almost all higher ed teaching and content ed teaching in the Montreal area is governed by union contract, and there's a seniority system, so it's really hard to get into the system, and we have no means of circumventing that. So that's an issue. But for those that do, the internship really has 2 parts. There's actually teaching and applying, and then there's a reflective paper where they not only reflect on how they applied what they learned in the other courses, but they're also supposed to go back to that assignment from the first course where they looked at the scholarship of teaching and learning and actually add to that body of literature. And for those that are interested, get ready to start publishing an integrative lit review on the scholarship of teaching and learning, either in their general subject area or their more specific subject area. And the program's name is C-Teach. I'll put that in the chat. It's C-Teach. At Concordia right now, it's on a hiatus because of we've had some transitions and we've had some budget issues, but we're planning to bring it back, hopefully in 1 year, if not at least definitely by 2 years. So that's my contribution. I'll turn it back to David, and thank you all for the opportunity.
Thanks. Thanks, Saul. I think the next part of our event is to have discussion. I think chatting in the background with Lavina. The group is small enough, we can keep this all in one room. I'm just wondering if folks would like the recording paused while we engage in discussion. Or you can